Many women find themselves in violent relationships every day.
Oftentimes, victims are too scared or embarrassed to admit to violence that's happening at home.
He was continuing to stalk her and show up at her home.
Sending emergency.
My mommy and Jesse are having a fight.
It's tragic that it can be often very hard and very difficult for women to leave those relationships.
You don't understand. He has a history of beating me up. He's been arrested for assaulting me.
According to the police report obtained by Not on Your Side, she yelled, "Oh my God, he's here."
Domestic violence. Domestic violence.
Domestic violence.
We need to stop being so reactive to violence and start being more proactive. Here we are, and we are starting our Warrior Forge podcast today on boundaries, on making and keeping boundaries, maintaining boundaries. And on the podcast, we have myself, of course, Sam Martin, and Brenda Bennett, and Kyle Olson. And so I actually decided to do this topic because I had a question from a student, and then again we were talking about boundaries in our last podcast, in the Kadima podcast with the Women's Jiu-Jitsu Alliance, about boundaries. And so I just kind of decided to make it a topic of the week because we had numerous people talking about boundaries and making boundaries, keeping boundaries, making boundaries with people. It goes along with self-defense because we need boundaries with self-defense, and we also need boundaries with people in our lives. So whether it's strangers, teachers, students, family, we need to have those boundaries. So we are going to talk about that. So one thing that I, when I started like thinking and learning about boundaries, we'll see if Brenda comes back in, is...
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. If you need to come and go, it's fine. I was reading The Power of Focus for Women, like maybe 10 years ago. Yeah, probably about 10 years ago. And there's The Power of Focus by, I believe it is Jack Canfield, yes. And they also have a book, The Power of Focus for Women. And that was a really good book for me to start creating boundaries, because what they talk about in that book is things like reality versus fantasy, really like goal setting and being real with yourself and what you want so that you can set those boundaries with other people, as well as they have like, one of the topics is the 5 deadly burdens, shedding the masks that we wear, setting new boundaries, creating excellent balance, and just maintaining those boundaries with people in your lives, and how to make it. It's hardest, like I was talking to Sam earlier, it's hardest to make boundaries with your family members and people that are close to you. So sometimes it's easy to make boundaries with strangers, but with family, we don't want to hurt their feelings, or maybe we don't want to get kicked out of the house if we're a kid. You know? So it's an interesting thing to learn, skill to learn with everybody. You know, your partner, with, you don't want to hurt your partner's feelings or your spouse's feelings, and how do we make those boundaries and make them clear? Because a lot of times we'll make boundaries that we don't really understand ourselves. So it's very important that we make goals for ourselves and be very clear about what we can realistically accomplish with those goals, and then it'll feed our boundaries. So, how about you, Sam?
I find it's easiest. I can totally do boundaries with my peers, with strangers, but as soon as it comes to my family, I'm like, cannot get people to respect boundaries. Now, I don't know if that's maybe something I'm doing or if that might be something I can't change in them, but I live in my little room.
Well, that's one thing that you have to realize when you're learning about boundaries and making boundaries is that you can't change people. So you have to change yourself, or you have to decide that you're not going to change something. And if it's something that you're not willing to compromise, then you'll need to find a way to express that to your loved ones in a respectful way, but a very, firm way. I will not cross this boundary. This is where I'm going. This is my boundary, and I need you to respect that.
I'm gonna quote the great Amy Becerra. Someone comes up and pinches me in the butt again, I'm gonna throat punch him.
Well, that
To
might
quote
be
the great Amy.
you're the consequence.
No, but like I recently had an incident with one of my peers in ROTC, and they called me some choice names.
Oh, wait.
And I had to shut that down really quick because I drew that boundary of like, it's not okay for you to use that kind of language, especially that kind of derogatory language towards me or anyone. And I had some of my other peers like, you're going to ruin his career. And I was like, no, I'm not. He's going to get a stern talking to. And ultimately, it did end up with everybody sitting down on a Zoom call, and I kind of made him cry because it was a little harsh. But I had to set that boundary and be like, it's not appropriate to call people whores. It's not okay to call people dykes. And I feel comfortable doing that personally with like my peers, but when it comes to like family, I always have a hard time in it. I'm coming to the realization I can't change people and control everything, even though I'm a control freak. Just want all the details right. But like, I don't know. What was the name of that book? Because that sounds like something I need to read.
It's The Power of Focus for Women.
Power of Focus for Women.
So
Do I not have a writing? Oh.
I looked for the book in my library, but it's one of those books that I've given away several times or given away to borrow several times, and it doesn't come back to me. So I didn't have it in my library again, so I'll have to buy it again. But yeah.
I'll download it on my Kindle. That sounds like something up my alley I need to read.
It says what successful women know about the secret to conquering challenges and creating change. Is what's on the cover. So how about you, Kyle? Well, let me unmute you. There you go.
Sorry. I think establishing boundaries isn't all that difficult. Unfortunately, I'm the kind of guy where like things don't bother me a whole lot. So really what I try to do is observe other people's boundaries, how they interact with other people, different things like that. I know a lot of people try to like create a boundary between teachers and students. I do that with my younger students, quite obviously, for obvious reasons. But I enjoy all the people that I roll with, younger adults and so on and so forth. And I like feeling comfortable and having the camaraderie for that. So I like extending friendship out to those types of people as well. But again, that's why if I'm the new guy at a party or in a group or in a setting or an environment, I prefer to observe more at first. I like to see what other people are comfortable with before I would ever broach a subject or a level of interpersonal relationship before asking permission if that's necessary. But for me, a lot of stuff just kind of rolls off my shoulders. I think where I have an issue is setting my own personal boundaries, not just with family, but with other people. And because for me, I don't care. If people want to be buds, cool. We can be friendly. If they want to hang out, maybe if I have time. Oftentimes I don't. People want to talk whatever they want to talk, cool. I think what Sam was talking about was super, super important about drawing a boundary when something does cross that line. So I think that's important as hell. But as far as setting my own personal boundaries, I just don't generally run into an issue where I find it necessary to. If that changes when somebody tries to become more involved with me, I might have to draw a boundary, but that's usually just a direct discussion. And that is unfortunately a dichotomy between men and women that I think is very different. If I tell someone not interested, go away nicely, that's usually enough, whereas for women, usually very psychically. And I don't understand that. So I try very much to respect other people's boundaries. Again, that's why I'm very observant at first. If somebody's talking and joking and whatever about anything, then I can figure they are comfortable with that if we get to that point where we're talking and joking. Otherwise, I'm not going to be the guy who starts saying and doing stuff that's super disrespectful to you. I'm not going to do it.
I think a lot of it has to do with communication, because you make a good point. I know that one time I had this discussion with my jiu-jitsu professor, and he was making the comment of how different men and women are in regards to drama. Now, don't get me wrong, guys can create just as much drama as girls can, and sometimes more. In our gym, a lot of times it is the guys that are causing the drama, but they handle it differently. Like they don't take it personally. So you call them a name, or you tell them something's wrong with them, or you are communicating with them what they're doing wrong, and they'll be like, okay, whatever. Or they'll just brush you off and say, well, I don't need to be your personal friend then. You know, they have this like emotional detachment from it. And women are not. They have the emotional attachment to all their conversations. So that's where like the difference is between, you know, the way that men and women communicate and draw their boundaries. We take it very, very personally. So I know that all the guys that I know personally that have really good relationships are very on top of this. Like they're very in tune with, I know my husband for sure is very in tune with the way that we're emotional, the way that I'm emotional, and he knows how to deal with that, and he knows what my boundaries are, and I know what his boundaries are. But if I start pushing those boundaries, he knows how to communicate with me as far as, okay, we're crossing a boundary. And I'm wise enough to say, okay, we need to just like chill for a bit. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's really important with that type of communication to really be forward with naming your limits, with telling somebody what your limits are and what your boundaries are.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like communication is key, and you say that all the time, but it's probably one of the most difficult things we will do with each other, let alone an organization or something else like that. Setting direct boundaries and direct limits like you're discussing would be probably key, honestly. And that's really, really cool about the way you and your husband communicate. I find that's a very challenging thing for people in a relationship to do, and I'm not sure why, but it is very, very much so.
Because a lot of times guys don't care, but they have to pretend like they care.
Occasionally.
Very blunt. How about you, Brenda?
Yeah, so I actually agree with everything that's been said. I think one of the key dovetail off of what you said, Stacey, is one of the keys to me, not just a leader,
Absolutely. Oops.
I'm the same as you. Like, I want to know what the other person, if I had a partner, but if I do, I want to know what they need, what they want, if I'm doing something. But I think most normal people are like that. Coworkers are like that. We come at each other sometimes. Even the girls, we get in big fights once in a while over just stupid things like that. Those were my dumbbells. I clearly had them set up here. And why did you come and take them? You're so rude. But later will come, like maybe somebody will come at me like that, and I'll be like, no, I'll just start to laugh sometimes when they come at me like that. Because I'm like, seriously? I have these sitting here. So I usually laugh. I usually try to use humor, but later usually we'll come together and be like, hey, sorry about that, but I really thought I said those words. I know that's kind of funny, but that happens every single day, you guys. There's especially this one girl that does
Gym drama.
so much drama. You literally have this drama. But you have to, I think it's super good. That's just my way of handling it. It's just laughing or smiling or not laughing at them, but just kind of like, whoa, bro. Like, it's not that serious. We're just that's the advantage.
I had a coworker recently say something.
And you want people to leave that alone and respect it. I don't want to have to put cones around it for them to respect it. So that's my life. That's my
I had a coworker badmouth jujitsu recently, and I was like, listen.
oh no, she didn't.
I was like, you sure? You sure you want to do this?
That's really crossing a boundary
6
there.
weeks. That's a boundary.
But I think you're like totally right though, Brenda. Like, no, like your boundaries with, you're describing the different kinds of boundaries, and knowing, with females, we'll have this little bickering, little back and forth. We have work drama. We have, all that little stuff, but we communicate. A lot of the times we'll communicate and be respectful to those boundaries, even if we disagree, and we can communicate that. And sometimes we can keep our distance with somebody, and it's a very healthy environment to be like that. Where with the gentleman, or not gentleman, that was doing that little grab ass thing, you did the perfect thing. You drew your boundaries, and it's okay to, we say this in our seminars all the time, it's okay to not be nice. When somebody crosses your boundary, especially a boundary like that, it is okay to be absolutely 100% blunt. That is crossing the boundary, that is crossing the limit, and I will not stand for it. And when it comes to the second time, something better be done, or you're going to get physical and tell him exactly what type of physical contact is acceptable in that situation. So what do you have to say about that, Kyle, about Brenda's little mishap with that guy? On guy's behavior.
Should be treated like a jackass. So it's okay to be mean. I do think your response was good the first and second time. You have to be direct with them. You have to be stern. And I mean, even to the point you mentioned that, you told him it's not okay, or don't touch you, we're not friends. And he says, okay, baby. I'm not your baby either. My name's not baby to you. My name is this. And that is perfectly okay response. Actually, I remember the first time I had a, mishap or something like that. I got to this random habit of calling girls darling, just randomly. And the person who shut that down was my boss's wife, actually. And she really said, I'm not your darling. Don't call people darling. That's super disrespectful. Don't you ever do that again. I was like, what? Okay. That put an end to that real quick. So it's just, sorry, messages.
I don't mean to interrupt, but sometimes they really don't, by they, I mean, they really don't get it, or it's offensive, I think. And so we have to be correct like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if they're a decent human being, like I like to consider myself one, you learned it, you stop doing it. But for someone to come back a second time, it's okay to treat a jackass like a jackass. You've given him the warning. He chose to ignore it. That's crossing a boundary. Fuck him. Honestly. Pardon the language. Sorry.
One of the things that I was looking up, let me see if I can put this out there.
You're on mute.
Oh. That happens. So I went to, there's a website called psychcentral.com. And one of the things that I found in my research was 10 ways to build and preserve better boundaries. And that's one article that I came across that was really good. It had a, let's see, so said name your limits, and we've talked about that. Tuning into your feelings, really understanding what you want from a relationship, and we talked a little bit about that. Being direct was number 3, so we just went over that. Being direct with people and being okay with being direct, and that's one thing we talk about a lot in seminars, is that women have a hard time being direct, especially with strangers or really like family members that you don't want to piss off, for example. So the next thing in line after being direct is giving yourself permission. So fear, guilt, self-doubt, they're big potential pitfalls. And the writer of this article says, we might fear that the other person's response, if we set and enforce our boundaries, we might feel guilty by speaking up or saying no to a family member, for example, Sam. Many believe that they should be able to cope with a situation or just say yes because they're a good daughter or a good son. And even though they feel drained or taken advantage of, we might wonder if we even deserve to have those boundaries in the first place. So giving yourself the permission to have those boundaries and understand that that's what makes a healthy relationship. If they're not going to respect your boundaries, then you have to give yourself the permission to set those boundaries and work to preserve those, because it's your right to have them. What do you got to say about that, Sam?
I feel called out. I try. No, it's gotten better in more recent years, and I think working with Warrior Forge, getting more confident, a little more assertive, has definitely helped me be able to maintain boundaries better. But there's still work in progress. I mean, things aren't always going to get better overnight. Like I can look at like friendships I've had, and like I've had to set boundaries of like, a lot of people like to call me old lady at work because they want to go out and party till 2 a.m. and I get up at 5 to work out. I only party on Friday or Saturday, but I'm up early. So I don't like going out because it affects my sleep schedule, and then I start losing weight and getting anorexic looking. So
But that's exactly, like the next thing. So the next thing after the practice self-awareness is, the next thing after give yourself permission is practice self-awareness. So that leads right into that. Like your feelings, and you're honoring your feelings, and you're learning, like in the last couple years, to honor your feelings and honor your emotions and understand them so that you can portray them or tell them to your family, and have them understand, this is how I'm feeling about this situation. So your family, what they will tolerate, and what you will tolerate. So kind of trying to find that happy medium of, okay, so if they're not going to tolerate this and I'm not going to tolerate this, where can we, make the line of respect? And I think that even though you don't feel like it, I think that you've come a long way in having those healthy boundaries, even though you're not always 100% happy with the results.
I want a little more control.
Well, unfortunately, you're not going to get that until you move out.
I want control. I'm working on it. No, but like, it stinks to say it like this, but it's like, things don't change overnight. and we can't expect them to change overnight. And in very rare cases, will things change overnight? So we have to accept that baby steps happen. We talked about that in the goal setting podcast. We have to have these little baby steps occur first, and little building blocks.
And guess what? Guess what the next one is? Number 6.
Building blocks.
It's consider your past and your present. So where were you in the past, and how far have you made it to the present? And I know a lot of people, when they have something happen in their life, a lot of times they fall down. Basically, like in judo and jiu-jitsu and other martial arts, we say, fall down 7 times, get up 8. And it's a good thing to put into this, because a lot of times when people fall down, they feel like they took a step back and they can't come back. But you can always come back to, not just is tomorrow a new day, but the next minute is the next minute. So if we can look at that as, okay, I fell, I let this person cross my boundary, we had a bad fight, whatever it happens to be, but the next minute you can make that boundary and you can change your boundaries. There's nothing saying that you can't ever change your boundaries. Maybe you made your goals and you've been going towards your goals, and then you take a step back, but you can change your boundaries. That's your personal choice, and you'll grow. You'll continue to grow as long as you get back up that 8th time, right? Let's see what's next. Make self-care a priority. All right, let's talk about self-care. You want to take this one, Brenda?
Self-care. Oh, yeah. I was going to make a comment on the last one, though, about conflict. Actually, it's not even a bad thing normally, as long as it's normal conflict that someone attacks you or something like that. I believe that actually makes us stronger without any kind of pressure or conflict ever. Really not growing or becoming stronger at all. So we actually we don't want it, but we should actually welcome it a little bit, because we learn about the other person, we learn about ourselves in that moment. So if it's dovetailing into self-care, yeah, I recommend workouts every day. That's self-care. You feel better. You endorphins up. Yes, we have to be working out. I'm not kidding about that. That is something.
Uh-oh.
I will say on self-care,
Did we lose
because
you?
I am that workout fiend. Maybe not as bad as some people in the chat, but I will work out until I'm ill, or I will be working out so intensely that I will start losing weight and lose my appetite, and I want those happy endorphins, and I'm almost like a little addict. I want my hit.
I'm pretty sure you're in the right chat for that. I think we're all on the same page there.
Yeah, I don't know about Kyle, but I definitely know Brenda, and I definitely know you. I've actually had to work on self-care besides exercise as a form of self-care. So for me, playing guitar or painting, doing the artsy-fartsy stuff. For other people, it might be other things. For some people, it might be video games. Doing exercise 100% of the time, eventually your body's gonna more than likely break down, and you're gonna get injured or sick. And then when you're injured, what are you gonna do? Cry.
What do you have to say about that, Kyle? I know you want to say something.
No. What are you talking about? No, you're right that self-care is not just about working out all the time. I'm okay with working out all the time. We actually had a training session, which I wanted to tell you all about. Actually, we had a training session at my house the other day, 9 hours. Not one student went home for 9 hours of training.
Nice.
I think everyone's thirsting to get back to it. Everyone misses it. Everyone misses each other. Everyone misses doing. And it was a phenomenal day. The next 4 days I couldn't move, but
that's what I'm talking about,
really
though.
cool experience. Yes,
that not being able to move for 4 days.
But that's when you have ancillary exercises. activities. So I like writing. I'm working on a trilogy. I finished my first book. I'm about 160 pages into my second book. So that's something that I enjoy doing. Playing guitar is friggin' awesome. I actually want to start learning that again, but it's something I'm not good at. So that's really cool. But something for yourself. I'd even extend it to just a little bit. Every morning, I like to wake up, and it's more of a dropping weight and health thing. But before you drink any water or eat any food, you spend 20 minutes doing a light to moderate cardio workout. Then you start eating your food. Your body's basically jump starting your digestive system so it absorbs nutrients better and blah, 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 blah. That's why I do it. But aside from that, just waking up and going, those happy endorphins start running through your head. You feel good afterward. And then, let's be honest, super early in the morning, sipping a cup of coffee and just feeling accomplished right in the beginning of the day. So it's such an important part of the day. And everything that we're talking about as far as setting boundaries for being okay with saying stuff and everything else like that is all about starting with the self-care, and then everything that we talk about in the Warrior Forge is gaining the confidence and knowing that you're worth it and so on and so forth. That's none of this happens without that, and that's why everything that you're doing, that's why the movement is so powerful, and that's why I love it. And I have to bring up my accident. I spent something like 3 months in a bed. Just too weak to walk. And that's when I started at Willard Ford Strong Sports doing physical therapy there. And during that time, I spent a lot of time, in my head, trying to reconcile what life would look like after all that. And B, writing and reading and doing the other stuff that would help work me through that. And so, like Stacey was saying, fall down 7 times, get up 8. I spent 3 months in bed, and I watched all of my students over the next year get as good as I was in martial arts, is what I was worried about. And now I noticed my fight game changed. I pay attention to other details now, things that I could do before I can't do anymore, but now I do something different. So it's not that I'm worse off than I was before. I'm different than I was before. So it's all about constant growth. It's all about trying to build yourself back up always be building yourself up. Everybody in this chat, you guys all kick ass. And never, ever, ever lose sight of the fact of how awesome you all are. Seriously.
Oh, thanks. You're awesome. We still need to have that podcast, Kyle, so you need to remind me.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Sorry.
That was a reminder. So, do you want to elaborate on that? Because I think it's good. Have you changed as far as your boundaries go with after your whole before and after? Because you're basically changed your whole life, right? So did you?
Yeah, my boundaries absolutely changed. In some good ways and some bad ways. They changed in that, like I said, I don't really give a damn anymore. Like, people want to hang out and talk and do it. I don't. Whatever. I'm fine. Unfortunately, one of the big boundaries I set is letting people get too close to me. I realize it's entirely like a thing in my head and a lie I choose to believe, but a lot of bullshit happened when the accident happened. So I just kind of had to deal with that my own way. But yeah, you're right. As far as setting boundaries, when you get a much broader perspective of life, like, a lot of things matter more and a lot of things matter less. You find the people who are really, really important to you, and I swear to God, you'd die for them. And I honestly mean that's people like family and so on and so forth. If it could be family, I realize I have a different family structure than a lot of people, but you find those ones who matter. You can't do life alone. You try, but you can't.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm answering that question directly. Sorry.
No. I that's why I asked, because one of our dear friends, David Garcia, he just went through, thyroid cancer, and it's one of the things that he mentioned last time that we met, and going through that whole process of one day he does Kempo. So one day he's, into everything he does, his job, his dojo, his family, and just 100% gives of himself to all of those areas, and all of us can relate to that. And then he finds out that he has thyroid cancer, and everything stops, and you find out exactly what you want and what you live for and what's important and who in your life is important. And what he said was like, he's all, I love all of you guys, but really when I was going through that, I didn't give a shit about anybody except for my family. Like, my family was 100%, that's who I wanted to spend every waking minute with, and everything else came second. And then after that, it was, when I get through this, what are going to be my new goals? What do I want to accomplish in my life? Because touching people, emotionally is more important. Being something important in somebody's life. But ultimately, those people, the people that are closest to you and the people that love you, and that you love, that's like 100% the only thing that's important when you're going through that. And so it really does change you. So for him,
for the better, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for him, it's the same thing. You really are very in tune with what your boundaries are with people, and what you're hyper focused on your goals. And at first, that goal is just living, surviving. And in a sense, you went through something, and David went through something where those are the same. It's not the same, but I could say as traumatic as what a lot of people with the Warrior Forge Project and the people that we serve have gone through, with sexual assaults and rapes and abuse. It can be very similar to the same thing. And a lot of times those people are in the process of, when they're being victimized, they don't have the loved ones close to them. And so they're at the very bottom of that pit. And then when they come back, it's like, I'm going to give 100% so that I can do something, I can be someone, I can make a difference. So I think it's all very important to realize.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see, what's the next thing? So we went through give yourself permission. Seeking support. That's actually, all of these feed perfectly into each other. So support is a huge one for all of us. And I guess you can continue on that, Kyle, because that's exactly what you ended up needing, was that support and accepting the support. That is like bigger, especially for guys, I know.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. A couple things, they might sound super cliche, but I learned them to be truths kind of the hard way. That is, if you constantly put someone before you, you're teaching them that you come last. So it's very important. I'm not saying don't help people. Helping people's super great and whatnot, but you have to take care of yourself first. You can't save a sinking ship if you're not around to save it, right? So, it's important, again, to focus on yourself. In addition to that, I know I was saying that you can't do it alone. So it's funny because I started seeing a therapist after everything. And for like a year and a half, he told me the same thing. He was like, dude, your mindset is so great and so amazing. And usually I'm trying to convince people to get up and get out of bed and go do stuff. And here I am trying to tell you to slow down. It's just, you're doing too much. And he said he feels bad because he doesn't think he's doing anything for me, but it was good for me to have a non-biased, non-partisan person, someone who doesn't know me for anything. And literally for like a year and a half, all he was a sounding board for me to talk my way through issues. And I realized that I paid the man to be my friend, but it was important to have a friend. And I had friends prior to my accident that I'd known for 20 years already, and I got more support out of the Kung Fu community and out of Warrior Forged than I did from some of those people, and that was a little crazy for me. I spent long hours on the phone talking to guys like not Lee Merrill, Lawrence Rouse, Willard Ford, talking to Ben Jones up in Seattle. I think that's where he lives. Spent a lot of time talking to guys like that, and they were helping me figure out ways to improve my physical condition and my martial arts, and to help change things up to work with my limitations. At a time, mind you, when I wasn't even sure if I was keeping a leg.
Right.
Like shit was real. The future was just a big question mark for me. And by having the support system of the family that I did have, the friends who were real friends, and then other people having them help me walk through all that. Like there's a way around everything, and sometimes it's super, super easy to focus on the shit, on the dark, on the bad things. It's real easy to do. And just having those people able to constantly pull you back. A support system, if you start feeling a certain way, I know Ryan Spink talks about it a lot. If you start feeling a certain way and you got to call someone or whatever else, or like I told one of my friends the other day, look, man, like, I don't care if you think you're boring me. I would 100% rather spend 3 hours listening to your shit than listening to a eulogy about you. Like,
absolutely.
And yeah, so these support I know it's easy to say, I shouldered down and I did it myself and you had to and blah blah blah. Realistically, without all of these people who would talk to me and walk me through and help me train after I could walk again, and one of the biggest helps for me was that Jeff actually had me coming into the studio into Strength and Honor. And at first, all I could do was watch, and then I started teaching. I was still in a walker, like I couldn't even walk 3 houses down still, and that got the minds, that got the gears turning, that got everything going, because martial arts has been my whole life. So spending so much time away from it was hard. And Jeff was always sending me YouTube videos to watch and study and go and do it and all that stuff. So yeah, you got to have support. You got to have someone to talk to. You got to have someone who walks you through. And every once in a while, you got to have someone who kicks your ass, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I had the one friend who was like, I was complaining about something. I don't remember what it was. And we were like, are you done? Are you done feeling bad about yourself? Okay, cool. Now
sounds like Ryan.
Huh?
I said it sounds like Ryan.
That sounds like you.
It was a girl. I forgot who it was. It was a girl.
Maybe it was me.
It might have been you.
Are you done feeling bad about yourself now? Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Sounds like you, Stacey. It really does.
Well, that works right into being assertive, which is the next thing. And we have to be assertive with our boundaries. That whole conversation kind of reminded me of, I want to hear from you in a second too, Brenda, since you're stop moving around. When I first started reading The Power of Focus and I first started martial arts, I had come out of an abusive relationship, and my daughter just started martial arts. I started with her. And giving yourself permission, just to back up a little bit, giving yourself permission to do something for yourself and to have those boundaries, that was a huge milestone for me. And I don't know about all of you, but that was a huge thing for me, was allowing myself to do something for myself. Because as soon as I decided to do martial arts, my ex was on my ass saying, why are you not at your kid's baseball game and you're at Kung Fu? So you're at Kung Fu and your kid's playing baseball. You're being selfish taking that time for you. You should be at your kid's baseball game. And then, mind you, this is the time where I have been at soccer games and baseball games and everything 100% of the time since they were little, and now they're in middle school and high school, so I can afford to miss a game here and there, and I'm doing something for myself. So I allowed myself to have that boundary, and because of that, I'm where I am today. You know what I'm saying? So I did seek support with my decision from the people that were in my dojo, and then I was assertive. I said, you know what? You can call me selfish all you want. I'm doing this for me, and it's going to make me a better mom. Because if I'm doing something for me, and that's like the biggest thing I learned about keeping my boundaries and allowing myself to do something for myself, was that my kids immediately became happier because I was happier. I was happier because I was doing something for me, and my kids were happier because I was happier and not stressed out. So, absolutely. Starting small. So, like, we're getting to that's starting small is number 10. So, I'm gonna let Brenda take this one. Starting small, Brenda.
Okay, so for me, I have kind of a similar story. I also had an abusive ex, a very controlling, all of this. I was a completely different person than the one you guys know. I never would have even thought of myself being a leader, having teams, anything else, because I just didn't have any confidence, and I had a lot of fear. And just fear also of rejection. Like if I didn't, I'm going off a little bit, but I think it's very pertinent. That's the reason why women stay in these relationships, because we just have a lot of fear of being out there on our own, and we're told over and over that we're not good enough. You won't last 5 minutes out there. That's an actual quote. So, but I lasted a lot more than 5 minutes. Here I am 9 years later. So starting small for me, and I think for almost everybody, is just that initial thought that comes up and that confidence to go, you know what? I kind of don't like the way things are going. I think I can change things, and just have the confidence to know, and then start to formulate whatever that plan looks like for you. That's for me, that's starting small. It's just that idea that comes up, and like, you know what? I think I can do this. I think most women are like that too, not to cut out the men, but I think we get tired of a situation like, okay, I put up with this long enough and I'm pissed off, and I'm like, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. I can do this. That's starting small to me.
Now, what about with changing? I'm going to let Sam weigh in on this, because she decided to take that step forward. I'll mute it there. With self-defense after a traumatic experience. And how did you take the steps? What were your steps into doing where you are today, I guess?
So, like, when I started martial arts, I went with my ex. She hated it. I loved it, but I wasn't going to do it because of her, because she wanted to spend time with me. Cheating happened, and then I was like, I'm going to go back there. That sounds like a fun place to go. And I started just doing jiu-jitsu and stuff, and then you and some of the other women with Warrior Forge just kind of grabbed me by the gi one night and was like, come play Krav. And it kind of just went from there. I was really like tired of being afraid all the time. That was what drove me to like start martial arts, because it all kind of started with like Ronda Rousey. It all started with Ronda Rousey. But like I'm seeing her kick ass, and I'm just like, could I do that? And I know judo and jiu-jitsu are different, but like the arm bars in jiu-jitsu too, maybe I'll go there. And then it just kind of started from there. And it was really small steps at first, because I remember I only had one gi, and it would take like a couple days to dry. I also was like super out of shape, but eventually, like, I got to the point where I was doing classes every day with you, or not with you sometimes because I had work. I still go to evening class. But we talked about habit change, I think, the last podcast, and you have to kind of take that baby step, because if you do too much at once, you're going to hit a plateau and you're going to get burnt out, and just slowly work into it. Like, I'm going to try not go balls to the walls when jiu-jitsu gyms open tomorrow, but I got 8 weeks of angry to make up for.
I'm gonna.
I'm tired. I don't want to go play.
I bet. Well,
8 weeks of victory.
I'm gonna let Kyle now, the king of small steps, take this too, because obviously you had to really settle into small steps. Because I remember, right after the accident, you were like super frustrated, and you went through, things like depression and finding that purpose and those people that could help you, get to the next stage where you could get into therapy and rehab. So I'm sure you, above everyone, can explain what small steps means.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try and shorten that conversation a bit.
Well, we can always elaborate that on our podcast together.
Definitely. I think it was Brenda and Sam and you, Stacey. You all mentioned something that really resonated with me because it's true. Every small step, every single one, has the same start, and that's making a decision. And I spent my whole life running, fast as I could, trying to drag all the people that I could with me to better ourselves and get better at everything. And sleep is what I sacrificed for it. But I was the guy who'd be there at 2 a.m. helping you move if that's what you needed. My martial arts had always been a thing. And I had always, my whole life, told people, you fall, you get back up. Something catastrophic happens to you. You might not feel okay, but it's okay. And you have to just shoulder forward and keep moving because the world doesn't stop. And after my accident, much like you were talking about my frustration and everything that I was going through, it was always undermined by the idea that it was time to prove myself right with everything that I'd talked about. And it was the decision of do this, do it now, no matter how bad it hurt, no matter how long it took, no matter how much it sucks. Do it now, or be a hypocrite. Because it's what you basically preached your whole life. And I couldn't wait to get my foot going better. I didn't know if I was going to keep my leg, and I couldn't wait to make my foot move again. So literally baby steps. I remember challenging myself in the hospital when they tried to teach me how to walk. The first time they stood me up, I stood up for 30 seconds, and that's all I had. That's all I had in me. Despite that, when I went home, my mom used to have to walk me around the cul-de-sac that we were on. And I remember the very, very first time I was like, all I want to do is get to the end of the cul-de-sac. That's what I want. It was like 6 houses away. I just wanted to get to the end of the cul-de-sac, and that was going to be good. That was it, and I'd be fine. And so we got outside, and I made it to the end of our driveway into the neighbor's house. And that's it. That's all I had in me. And she had to help me back into the house and pop some Percocet and Dilaudid and make me pass out for a minute. It was great. Good times. But it was the first step on a really, really, really long journey that would bring me closer to my family, the people who helped me out. We are very, very, very close now. To the people in the martial arts community who I couldn't have done it without, to absolutely everything. But it all started, like you said, with making the decision, with deciding to challenge myself. I was not okay just sitting in a couch for the rest of my life, which the doctors very, very much insinuated could be the case. And I was like, nah, it's not going to be the thing. Sorry. The small steps starts with the decision, and then it's reinforced by commitment and confidence and everything else that we've talked about. Once you have that decision, you have to stick by it.
100%.
And it's okay to stumble. It's okay to fall. It was okay for me to stay in bed some days because I fucking hurt. And that was fine. Ultimately, I knew I'd be fine, and it was just a matter of making the best life I possibly could.
Absolutely. Yep, that's a perfect response. I think David said the same thing, about his fight with cancer. He was thinking, he got to this stage of when he was thinking about what he teaches the kids and what they do through their test. So like when they're giving a test, it's hours long. in Kempo, and it's worse as you get up in the ranks. You have to do all of the steps. So you have to, like, once you get to black belt, it's like you have to do everything. You have to do all the tests in one, and then you have to, like, there's so much pressure to keep going, and all the time he's saying, do you want to stop? Do you want to stop? Because you won't get that belt if you don't stop. And he said he had to take every little bit of the things that he's been preaching his entire life and put that to use and to work with himself. And he same exact thing. He was like, talking to himself, are you going to be a hypocrite? Because all your life you've been teaching this. So it applies to you now in the biggest way. What are you going to do? And so I think that's a huge, motivation and huge example.
I feel like, especially with children, and a big part of my decision-making process, because we had a bunch of kids at the gym, we had a bunch of adults, and so on and so forth, and it very much felt like for a period of time, everyone was watching to see, would I get better? How would I do? And whether I chose to sit in the couch for the rest of my life or get better, no matter what I chose to do, it would send a message to every child that I taught that was in that gym. And it was not okay to send the wrong message. It wasn't okay.
And look at you now.
Yes.
Awesome. We keep losing Sam.
Yeah.
Well, we are at we're at an hour and 13 minutes, so it's a good time to finish up. So, Brenda, did you have anything else you wanted to add at the end? Just a summary for people.
Yeah, I think our life is not just our own, if that makes sense. I don't believe we're just put here to live our life selfishly, get ahead, be successful, whatever that means, make money, etc. I think just what Kyle just said, that our life impacts many people that we don't even see. A lot of times we don't even know. We may never know with some people, but sometimes people reach out and they tell us things, or some little thing that I said or did that impacted them. Sorry. Sorry.
You're still there.
My iPhone is going dead. Sorry, I didn't do that. Yeah, so we really have to think about that and think about our responses and our boundaries, everything, really, truly everything that we say and do. I think self-control is so important because so many people are watching us. Am I still on?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Everybody from... So, yeah, so that's really my life doesn't really belong to just Brenda. It belongs to a lot of people, all the people that I mentor, all the people that follow me. That's one thing, but so many others, my family, everyone, right? And I learn things. I've just learned today, things from you three. So I love this. But that's what's important about life. Our life is not ours, really. It's everyone's, right? I mean, I'm maybe not explaining that very well.
No, I love it.
Perfect.
It was
that
perfect.
is literally word for word something that went through my head. My life is not my own. The kids are watching, and what I do will structure how they approach life.
Exactly.
Later.
It's teaching them how to handle crisis situations.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to say anything, Sam? We're ending, so I don't know if you were. I don't know if you were there.
Cut out.
That's okay. We're ending, so just give a summary.
Big time cut out. You're wanting to set boundaries. It takes time. It takes constant kind of reinforcement of, at least in my experience, constant reinforcement of, no, we've talked about this. Stop it. In Brenda's case, I think she should have throat punched the dude, but it sometimes it takes time. You have to work step by step, slowly. And like Kyle was saying, like, you couldn't get up and go to the gym, so you had to find some other way to take care of yourself and make sure that you're going through life and try and live it the best you can through, like, I always go back to habit change. Wake up early, make your bed, work out. That's all I gotta say. Get up and make your bed.
You know, there's a whole book written about that. It was the Admiral in the Navy. He wrote a book. You guys know that one? Make your bed? Yeah. He said that's one of the most important keys in life.
Sam had it ready.
That's my favorite book.
Oh, okay.
Well, if you're listening or watching out there, you know that we have a book list, and we will definitely keep you up to date on that book list. And if you have any questions about what we talked about today or anything else, let us know and we'll podcast about it. So the last thing I have to say is just like everybody said, name your limits, tune into your feelings, just to remind you what the steps are. To be direct, give yourself permission, seek support, be assertive, start small. And the books that we recommended in the podcast was, again, Power of Focus for Women. And also, lift up the book again, Sam. Make Your Bed.
By Rear Admiral McRaven.
Yes, and again, what I pulled these 10 steps off of was psychcentral.com, 10 ways to build and preserve better boundaries. So I'll also put that in the post when we publish the podcast. So thank you guys for being on today, and we always want to end our podcast with, go Sam.
Be your own hero.
Be Warrior Forged.
Be Warrior Forged. I'm all for it.
Me too.
The recording has stopped.
All right, guys.
Have you finished Extreme Ownership?
Almost. I have like one chapter left.
I haven't.
Oh, it's so good.
Extreme Ownership by Jocko.
Another good one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Have you read that one, Kyle?
I have not yet.
Yeah, I should read that one.
Highly
You'll like it.
recommended.
You will really like it.
I was actually planning on doing an Amazon search as soon as we get off the phone.
You should. They'll all kind of pop up together. I think.
Yes.
Awesome.
My next one's Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. The dude ran 100.
You have to read that one.
I have to do that one next. But he
and
ran.
What's another one? My roommate's a Navy SEAL.
Oh, Jesse Eisler.
Yeah.
What was it? Can't Hurt Me?
That's
Can't
about
Hurt Me by David Goggins.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was on Rogan's podcast, but like he ran an ultra marathon, like 100 miles with all the foot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was the only individual to be a Navy SEAL, Ranger, and TACP, and he went through 3 hell weeks in 1 year.
Wow.
He's insane. He talks about taking souls.
He's so insane.
Absolutely insane.
Yeah.
I listened to him before I worked out as motivation, like, don't be a pussy. He broke all his bones.
Awesome.
There you go.
My phone is dying.
All right, guys. Thank
Okay.
you. Talk to you later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Great time. Good to see you all.
Yes,
Take
you
care.
too. Bye.
See ya.